Well, good morning. How are you? Welcome back to the Rich Man, Poor Man series. I am so glad that you're here, that I was so excited you were coming. I dressed up fancy for you, and I'm just so excited to see you. I hope you're as excited to see me as I am to see you. And Liberty Hill, hey, how are you? I'm so glad that you're here today joining in with us, or for those of you who watch online, glad to have you along. So it's going to be a really good day. Clearly, we're going to talk about something here today. But before we do that, let me just tell you what's coming starting next week, because today we're about to wrap up this series. And I'm going to start a brand new one next week. And I think the timing could not be more appropriate as the entire world begins to think about our relationships for a few days this month. And we are going to start a brand new series called Once It's Broken. And we're talking about relationships and what do you do once the relationship is broken, and what are some steps you can take to actually mend it back where you might find more strength and more meaning through a broken relationship. So I don't know if you are just one of those people and all your relationships are always perfect. Good for you. But if you're like the rest of us, then guess what? We could use some help once things break down. So we'll start that next weekend. Well, let's kick off today by using our imaginations, all right? So I'd like you to imagine something. I would like you to imagine that you wake up tomorrow morning, so get that in your mind. It's not today, it's tomorrow. This is coming. Just imagine you just woke up on Monday morning. Groundhog Day is past. It's not going to click and repeat at all. It is a real live day, and all of a sudden you lean over and you grab your phone and you find a notice that you have a new checking account that has been opened in your name. And so all the login information is there, and you grab it and you open it, and guess what? In this checking account, imagine this, right? You're laying in bed with your phone, you've just logged into a new checking account with your name on it, and get this, in that checking account is all the money that you have wasted so far in your life. Now we laugh because we all know that would be a whole lot of money. Now let's be specific about wasting. I'm talking about the money that you poor decisioned away. The money that we consumer debted away. You know, like you borrowed money on stuff and you don't even have the stuff, but you're still making the payments on the stuff, or you rolled it into the new stuff in the new loan, and you're just looking back and you're going, oh, that was embarrassing that I did that, right? Whatever happened to that thing that you bought? I mean, it looked so good, and then you wore it once and it's still in your closet. And look, couldn't we just go on and on and on about all that stuff? Imagine, though, if suddenly you woke up with a checking account and you had all that cash for all that stuff that you had wasted money on your whole adult life. But here's the catch. There was a catch to it. All of a sudden, you get a text that tells you, here's the catch to all the money. The only thing you can do with the money that you had wasted away, the only thing you can do now is give it away. You can give it away immediately in one lump sum, or you can give it away over time. It's like you are the owner of the lottery, and you can give it away in a lump sum, or you can give it away over time in small increments. But I mean, come on, think about that. Wouldn't it be fun to have back all that money that you wasted so that you could give it away? I mean, that would just be fun. All right, so hang on to that thought, because we're going to be back to it. All right, today, if you're just joining us and you're wondering what in the world is going on, let me just tell you, we are wrapping up this series called Rich Man, Poor Man, and it's about a card game that we've played in our house for years. It's a strategy game, as you can imagine. Most card games are, or many of them are. And when you think right and you have the right strategy, there's a reward. When you don't think right, there's a consequence because you had the wrong strategy. And so we know this is true in card games, but we also know it's true in life, that strategic thinking leads to reward, but not thinking strategically leads to a consequence. And what we've been doing is we've been trying to change our thinking, change our mindset, and here's what we've been trying to do. We have been trying to stop thinking like a poor man, and we've been trying to change our mind and our mindset and start thinking like a rich man. And so we've given these rich man money mindsets each week. The first one we talked about was that money can add meaning to your life, but it's not the meaning of life. And we had this question of, do you want more stories or do you want more stuff? Great question. You need an answer to that. The next week we talked about this one, is that money's direction reveals my affection. Right? When you get more, I mean, it's just like your hope can so easily migrate away from God, the provider, into you, where your hope now becomes in you, or maybe your hope is in your stuff. And then last week, we said this one, and none of us like this one, but we talked about it. Self-control determines who gets control. And you cannot serve, and this is what Jesus said, you cannot serve both God and money. You can't have two masters. You can't have two lords. And so he's just saying, who's going to be your Lord? And I issued a 3-month challenge, 90 days, to pick a percentage of your money that comes in and give it away immediately. In fact, what we said is, let's give and then save and then live on what's left over. Let's don't do what everybody else does, which is live first, save second, and then just give out of whatever's left over. So today, my unoriginal, in some ways, learn the hard way, rich man money mindset is just 2 words. Ready? The 2 words are simply this: live generous. Now, for all of you grammar people who are already freaking out, all of you teachers out there, yes, it should be live generously. But I left the ly off on purpose because for the next few minutes, I want to contrast the idea of be generous with live generous. And then I'll just define that for you. And the reason is we all know how to be in the moment generous. But we're not talking about be generous. The kind of generous we want to talk about is life-giving. And listen, if you'll take the advice today, you're going to save more money. You're going to give more money. You're going to consume less. And maybe best of all is you will be less consumed by what you have, by what you don't have, and what you want, and what you ultimately maybe hope to have someday. You'll be less consumed by that if you'll take the advice. Because we don't just live in a consumer culture, we are consumed by our consumptions. Because we already know what everybody else has. And we know what we could potentially have. And honestly, it's just so easy to get that it's crazy. I don't need to spend a lot of time there, but good Lord, you can almost just think about it, and it shows up 2 hours later at your door in a little white bag. I mean, it's amazing. And so it's easy for us to be consumed by our consumption, which is ultimately causes us to be more and more self-centered, which is the opposite of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And so, look, for the next few minutes, I'm going to attempt to teach you a better way to live, which is live generous. I'm not going to teach you a better way to give, a better way to live. And look, you already know how to give. In fact, part of the problem is that Americans easily confuse generosity with what we'll just call random acts of giving. But random acts of giving are not generosity. And the way to understand the difference is similar to how we all would consider ourselves good people. If I were to say to you, hey, are you a good person? You would say, I'm a good person. And if I were to say to you, hey, you know what? I kind of don't think you're a good person. Here's what you would do immediately. You would immediately tell me something good that you did. And because I did that, I'm a good person, right? Which, by the way, side note, it's exactly why you cannot win an argument with your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, because whatever you accuse them of not doing, they can point to a time when they actually did the thing that you said they never do, or the thing that you said they always do. What do you mean I don't help around the house? 2 weeks ago, I emptied the dishwasher without even being asked, okay? Game over, see, I do help around the house. You just can't win, right? And so we do the same thing with giving. And so let me just tell you, I'm going to press you a little bit today to try to convince you that you're not really generous, even though you do random acts of giving. And when I begin to press in on you, I'm going to tell you ahead of time, in your mind, you're going to be like, oh, no, Shane, you don't really know what I do. I am generous. And you're going to think of something that you gave, or you're going to think of a time that you said yes when somebody asked you for something, but none of that is what we're talking about. That's just our confusion about generosity. And I think our confusion about generosity is fueled by a few myths that cause us to think this way. So there are some myths about generosity. One of those is that generosity is spontaneous. Generosity is not spontaneous. Giving on the spot just means you're spontaneous, not necessarily generous. Because greedy people will give spontaneously if they think it will help them, or if they feel pressure, or if someone's watching. And you know why I know that to be true? It's because of 35 years of what I do. Spontaneous giving is often emotion-based. This has just been my experience. The best way to get people in a room to give money in the moment is to stir up their emotions. I mean, you give me a microphone and something I care about, and I can squeeze dollars out of you. Here's what I've learned. Unfortunately, when I'm talking to a group of people, I don't know if they're generous. So if I stir up the emotion, and what I mean is somebody's got to cry, and you got to feel it, and once you feel it, you're going to write a check. And look, giving based on emotion and spontaneity, that's not bad. I just want you to get that it has nothing to do with being generous. Here's another myth, is that generosity adjusts by how much cash I have. Maybe you've had a situation where somebody was asking you for money or to give maybe towards something, and you immediately had this thought, how much money do I have with me? Or you had this thought, maybe you even opened up your phone, how much do I have in my checking account? What you were thinking is, how many dollars can I access right now? And so when you don't have access to it, or there's not something there, you know, I'm really sorry, I can't help right now. Or maybe you considered what bills you have that are coming compared to your dollars, and you really couldn't help right then. You wanted to, your heart was in the right place, but you weren't in a position to give. What you had in the moment determined what you could give in the moment. And this is so important. People who live generous avoid that dilemma. You know why? Because they're ready. Here's another myth that we believe, and that is the amount is what counts. That is totally false. You can't understand dollars without context. Somebody says, yeah, I gave $1,000. Well, you know what? That might have been a real sacrifice for them to give. Or it might have been the amount they spent on drinks and dinner with their friends last night. You just don't know. So the amount doesn't determine generosity, because without context, we don't know what a lot actually is, and we don't know what a little is. We know that for ourselves, but we don't know that for anyone else. And so sometimes we think, I can't give much, so I'm not going to give it all. No. Look, generosity is not about the amount. The amount is not what counts. In fact, on that point, Jesus actually addressed that one time very directly. And it's a famous story. If you grew up in church, you've heard it. Even if you've never been to church or didn't hang around church, may not be a church person, you may have heard this story before. Jesus is hanging out with his 12 disciples, and they decide to go to church. They go visit the temple. And the Jewish people would have a treasury box, kind of like an offering box that we have in the back. And they might have a bag or something like that you drop money into as you come in or as you go out. And so Jesus and his guys, he gets to the temple, and he pulls his guys off to the side, and he says, hey, let's hang out over here and watch for a little bit as people are coming and going in and out of the temple. And so Luke is the one who tells us this story, and here's how he addresses it. He says, and Jesus looked up And he saw the rich putting their gifts, their money, into the temple treasury, into the box. Now, how did Jesus know they were rich? Probably assessed by the way they were dressed, maybe who they traveled with, maybe he knew them, or maybe it was just one of those God things and he just knew. But it goes on. He also saw a poor widow put 2 very small copper coins in the box. Now, again, how did he know she was poor? Maybe by her dress, maybe she was alone, maybe he knew her story because it was a God kind of thing, or maybe he had a relationship with her. And look, these copper coins, they were the smallest amount of money in their currency. And Jesus, after seeing this, he turns and he looks at his guys and he says this, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has just put in, get this, more than all the others." Meaning more than all the others combined. To which we say, and his disciples were probably thinking too, okay, what kind of Jesus math is that? And Jesus would have said, oh, that's kingdom of God math. Because God is not impressed by amounts, God is impressed by percentages. And so he goes on and he says, all these people, all of them, all these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, like out of their leftover. They gave some percentage, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. And so she gave more than everybody else combined. She's the most generous person in the room because the amount is not what counts. Last myth that kind of trips us up with generosity is this, that rich people are generous. No, rich people are rich. Do you know who's generous? Generous people are generous. And the two aren't the same. In fact, there's absolutely no correlation, and some of you can prove this because of the way that you grew up or maybe the circumstances that you're facing in your life right now. And Jesus just illustrated this in this little story that we looked at, is that poor people are generally, not always, but generally, in a general sense, they are far more generous than wealthy people. And I'm just telling you I've seen that to be true over and over and over again. And do you know why? Because truly poor people are not trying to save their way out of poverty. They're trying to survive. They aren't trying to get ahead because they know that getting ahead financially is basically practically impossible for them. And so they're very dialed into people who are living on the edge because they themselves are living right on the edge of financial catastrophe. And so because of that, they are very quick to help someone else because they're there or they've been there. And so often, and it seems like it was in Jesus' day, and I have watched this for years, so often, the poorer a person is, the more generous they actually are in the way that our Heavenly Father measures generosity. So, generous living. Live generous. What does that look like? It's not the amount. It's not responding to emotion of a guy in a money suit. It's something entirely different than that. And let me just put this in a little personal context, and then I'm going to push hard on this. And here's why. Because if you're a Jesus follower, I am telling you, it's so important. If you're not a Jesus follower, there's still something to be learned. And I want to just say up front, just full disclosure, what I'm about to tell you is easier for me than many, many of you. Not because I'm a better person, just simply how I was raised. Because I was raised that when you get money, the first thing you do is you give it. And so it's just been a habit of my life. Julie was raised the exact same way. This has never been a question for us. We just both have lived the same way. And we didn't learn it one day and so all of a sudden we're great people. It was put into us. This is just what we did because we grew up this way. And so honestly, it's just been a habit of our lives because we were raised that way. And I'll just admit, this is easier for me than it is for many of you because of that. Not something I did, but what somebody did for me. But for some of you, this is going to require a brand new rich man money mindset. But if you will do what I'm about to ask you to do, I'm telling you, it's a game changer. And if nothing else, You will be less consumed and controlled by our culture of consumption, because what I'm about to tell you is the way forward. So, I'm going to give you a definition of our rich man money mindset, live generous. And I want you to know it's bulky, but I'm going to walk you through it, right? So here it goes. The definition of live generous is the premeditated, calculated, designated liberation of financial assets, right? Now hold your applause. I know that deserves a standing ovation, but hang on, all right? Let me walk you through it. The first word is this, premeditated, right? To live generous, ready? You have to have a giving plan. I don't know how much money you have. I don't know how little you have. I don't know if you have a plan. You will not and cannot be a generous person if you don't have a plan. It is impossible without a plan, because you will confuse random acts of giving with generosity. But you're not necessarily a generous person, because without a plan, you don't know. You will be a consumer who gives spontaneously, sporadically, just here or there when somebody asks me for it. And in fact, you're going to wait to be asked for it. And you will never maximize your potential to give without a plan. It's impossible. If you don't have a giving plan, you are not going to live a generous life. Ron Blue wrote this book called Master Your Money. And he made this point that basically there's only 5 things you can do with your money. And he tells us you can spend it, you can repay debt with your money, you can pay your taxes, you can save it, and you can give it, right? And if you look closely, isn't that really the way we really live? Most of us live. It's actually the order that most people also give in, which kind of amounts to this, that this is me first, my creditors second, government third, me fourth, and others last. But if you want to know the truth, this one right here, this repay debt, creditors second, that's not really creditors. That's me too, because that's stuff I bought on credit. So get it. It's kind of like this. It's me, government, me, others last. Now look carefully, because this is a little bit incriminating. Especially if you think, oh, I'm a generous person. And let me just tell you, if giving is last, you're not a generous person. You've put yourself ahead of pretty much everybody else. And if you're not a person of faith, that is up to you. You can do anything you want to do with it. But if you're going to call yourself a Jesus follower, you can't live like this. And if you decide to live like this, will you please, for the love of God, stop calling yourself a Jesus follower? If this is a reflection of your money, you are not following Jesus. You may pray, you may believe, you may come to church, and you may be offended that I just said that. How dare you say that to me? If you think I'm being hard on you, why don't you just go read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John of what Jesus said about it? You can't follow Jesus if other people are last in any capacity, because the whole idea of following Jesus is put others first, because he put you first. This is why Jesus said so much about money, because money oftentimes is the key to our heart, which is what he's after, right? I mean, Jesus knew this. Jesus didn't need anybody's money. He just understood the power of it and said if his Father's kingdom was going to be first in our everyday lives, it had to be first in our everyday finances. We are called to be others first people. And if others are last in the way we manage our money, I don't care how you pray, I don't care how you feel, I don't care what you do, I don't care what you post, that is not following Jesus. And look, if you think I'm being hard on you, read what Jesus said about money. He says, look, if you're going to follow me, how dare you put giving at the end of the line? I mean, what does that say about your appreciation? What does that say about your confidence in God? Jesus followers, this has got to change. Otherwise, you know what? This is hard. We're consumers. We're not Jesus followers. So Live generous is the premeditated, calculated, designated liberation of our financial assets, which brings us to the next one, which is calculated, right? Here's how generous people think. Generous people, ready? They pre-decide. That's what calculated means, by the way. Generous people don't wait to be asked. Generous people don't look to see what's in their wallet or their checking account. Oh, I got to think about it. Let me just go home and see what I can do. No. They have pre-decided an amount, a percentage, and a percentage is better because a percentage rises and falls with income. Generous people pick a percentage and they set it aside, and that money is as good as given. It's just waiting for the opportunity. And get this, you can do this any way you want to do it. There are no rules. When money comes to us, let's immediately put a percentage away and start giving it to the things that we feel called to. And so, God, I want you to know this came in, and I'm going to give first because Jesus said in the context of money, seek first the kingdom of God. In other words, when something comes your way, you put God's kingdom first, and money is the most practical way to do that. So people who are generous, they've got a plan, and they pre-decided where a percentage of that money is going to go. And no matter how much money you make, even if right now you're looking for a job and things are upside down, have a plan and have a percentage and choose where that percentage goes. And I'm telling you, it puts the fun into funding. It puts the joy in joyous. And it will impact everything else you do financially. Because when you flip that list I showed you, I'm telling you, it impacts everything. Besides that, isn't it true we kind of never miss the money that we give away? So back to our definition, right? Living generous means the premeditated, calculated, designated, and up next is the liberation, the designated liberation of our financial assets. Do you know what that means? And this is just so fun. Generous people have already decided ahead of time where they're going to give their money. And they don't have to be asked. Generous people don't wait to be asked. Generous people are proactive, right? They've discovered, and here are the things that are important to me. Here are the things that I think are making a difference in me. Here are the things that are making a difference in my family. Here are the things that are making a difference in others. And I'm just going to let them know, and I'm going to be proactive in my giving. And this doesn't mean that you don't give sporadically. Doesn't mean that you don't give spontaneously. But that's add-on kind of stuff. Generous people have already decided. Let me give you a little secret in terms of how to decide. It's a great way to think about this. Always give from a grateful heart and a broken heart. You need to ask yourself, if you're married, maybe get your kids involved who are old enough to participate in this conversation. It's so much fun. It's so helpful. And just ask those two questions. As a family, and if it's just you, what am I grateful for? As a family, what are we grateful for? What breaks my heart? As a family, what is it out there that we see that just breaks our heart? The grateful question has to do with things that actually benefit you and your family. Like, what things come your way? And you're grateful for that because your life has been touched. You want to donate to whatever organization it is that has benefited you and your kids and your family. You're getting value and it's benefiting your family. Your family's better off because of it. And this is why if you are grateful for your church, you should have a plan for giving to your church. I mean, I am constantly baffled by this. When I meet Christians who are like, well, you know, the church has got all the money they need. I'm like, whoa, Tiger, it does not matter how much money they have, and it does not matter how much they need or whether they need it or not. This is not about need. This is about gratitude. Are you grateful for your church? Well, yeah, me and my kids and my wife, we go down there and we go to the this and we go to the that. And you don't support your church financially? That's crazy. Can I just say it straight for you today from my heart? If you're not grateful for your church, find a church you are grateful for and give there because you're grateful. And can I just tell you, as you already can tell, I'm not very shy about this. Everybody should have a plan on how they plan to support their church financially. The churches in our community, I'm just telling you, they are that important. But if you attend and you participate in a church and you don't have a plan for how you support your church financially, you're ungrateful. You're like, no. I have gratitude in my heart for this place. Can I just tell you, nobody gives a flying rip about gratitude in your heart. You know what I've discovered? My wife does not care about gratitude in my heart. My kids don't care. Your husband doesn't care. And your church doesn't either, because it's unexpressed gratitude. And let me define that for you. Unexpressed gratitude is ingratitude. If you're grateful for your church, you should have a plan to show gratitude with your money. And then beyond that, you want to ask the question, what stirs or breaks my heart? This is that thing that, oh man, when I hear about those kids or I hear about those people and, these people who are getting out of being trafficked or those people who are homeless or foster care or mentally or physically challenged people, whatever it is, it just breaks your heart. You need to find an organization that is operating in that space and designate some of your giving money. And here's what I suggest. Write them a letter and say, I'm going to send this to you every month, and you don't have to invite me to your gala or fundraiser. Nope, I'm not one of those people. I'm a generous person. I don't have to be asked. I believe in what you're doing because what you're doing impacts me. It moves my heart. So what breaks your heart? What problem in society or maybe in the world would you love to see solved? Find somebody who's in that space, who's doing a great job, and then just decide, boom, we're sending them money. So look, if you don't have a plan, you won't be ready. And you'll be inconsistent. And if you don't have a plan, you'll be thinking, how much is in my checking account? That's how everybody else does it. Don't be like everybody else, because if you do, you will put other people last. You put the kingdom of God last. You put the church last. You just can't consider yourself a Jesus follower if that's the case. Can you imagine how much money you would have given away by now to do things you believed in and were passionate about? And can I just tell you, I just don't want you to live another day, another season of your life that way. And it's not because I'm trying to get your money. It's not because the church is or the church needs your money. Because look, can I just again be as authentic as I know how to be? If you don't trust me because I'm the pastor of a church, if you don't trust me because I'm the pastor of a church in a money suit, I get it. I totally get it. But you know what? I am responsible to God for your spiritual development, and how we manage our money is a key ingredient to how well we are following Jesus. But if you don't trust me, then let me just tell you, pick a percentage and give it somewhere else, but do it consistently. But please learn and begin to live generous. It's what's best for you. It's what's best for your children. It's what's best for our culture. It's what's best for the world. And it is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And so here we go, all the way back to where we started. Just imagine that you woke up tomorrow morning and you had that checking account. Think of all the good you could do. All of us think, I wished I could do more. Do you really wish you could do more? You're like, well, Shane, I did before you preached this message. Now I'm kind of afraid to answer that question at this point. Because the truth is if you wished you could do more, you could do more. And I'm telling you, you have no idea what your giving capacity is until you have a plan. And can I tell you, if that scares you, it shouldn't. Do you know what should scare you? Is living another season of your life without doing this. That's what should scare you, because generous people are the happiest people. You say, well, how do you know that? Well, that's what Jesus said. It is more blessed, happy, that's the translation, to give than it is to get. He was not kidding. Jesus says, you want to be happy? You cannot consume your way to happiness. You've already tried that. You already know, if you're honest about it, that's impossible. So you want to be happy? Give more. Save more. Consume less. And you'll be happier. I mean, really, in the end, come on. Every one of us lives in the United States of America. Good grief, we have already won the lottery when you think about what else goes on outside our country. What goes on in the rest of the world? So this isn't about give to get. This is about give because you've been given to. And this is what it means to follow Jesus with your finances. And so shift to the rich man money mindset and decide to live generous. And here's what that means. Make a plan. Pick a percentage. And then for all you English people, give generously. More important, live generous. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you for the challenge, and what a challenge it is for us. Thank you for the challenge to assess our life and how we can be more like you and follow you with our finances. Father, would you help us as we assess our mindset? God, would you help us to know and to remember that if we'll be strategic like you taught us, that there's great reward. But when we fail, to think the way you want us to think about our money, that there's consequence. And so, Father, from my heart, you know, my heart is I don't want that consequence for people. That, God, I want the blessing that comes because of it for them. And so, God, I pray you would help each of us make the decision to follow Jesus. And we ask it in his name. Amen.